Hi folks, it's me, John. Welcome to another Yellow Sheldon. Tonight I want to talk about hubs. Specifically, I want to talk about the part we never think about, the middle of the hub. Now, you might expect that it's an important piece of the hub, but I think it's far less important than you might realize. Sure, increasing the diameter, decreasing the wall thickness, making sure it's a nice, stout piece of strong metal is important. It resists torsional flexing. It helps aid in power transfer, but how important is it really? Well, the answer might surprise you. Case in point, the Real Designs see-through hub. Now, this is a lot like a hub that came out from a company called Hershey Racing, which was called the Naked Hub, which also used a piece of clear Lexan as the central spacer in the hub shell. Now, I actually had an original Hershey with sort of electric violet anodized end caps and hub flanges, and I'll be damned if that thing didn't last forever. And I was working as a bike messenger at the time. You just rolled on it and rolled on it and rolled on it and occasionally pressed new bearings in. So, as far as I can tell, the spacer in the center needs only to be stiff enough to resist sort of the wheel collapsing in on itself. It's not really getting twisted at all. It's not really doing anything aside from keeping the flanges apart from each other. Now, obviously, there are limits. You can't get silly with it. You can't use a piece of goddamn 8x11.5 paper. But I'll show you some examples of both bonded together hubs as well as how weak an all metal monolithic hub can be. So check it out. Also, come on, how fucking cool is this? What a neat thing to have on your bike. The weird thing is, though, I don't know if you've picked up on it yet, it's not like it spins around like this while you're riding. Your fork immobilizes the axle, so it just sits there and it's like, yo, what up, I'm real, and the wheel spins around it like this. So, first things first, this is a Dura-Ace 7600 high flange track hub. This particular one, the previous owner, smart cookie that they were, clipped the spokes before they took the track cog off. Now, I shouldn't have to remind people of this, but it's happened to me enough times where I think I'll put out a global FYI on this. Remove freewheels, cassettes, track cogs, whatever you have on your hub before you clip the spokes to rebuild it. Remove them. You have an enormous amount of torque potential in a fully built wheel. You can grab onto it, you can have two buddies grab onto them while you twist these bastards off. In this case, they didn't do it. And I was trying to, take off the cog. I've used heat on this. At a certain point, I noticed these striations in the center of the hub. Do you see that? This is after actually a very, very small amount of torque. See, what I had done is I'd greased up and hand tightened a track cog onto this side, and then hand tightened the lock ring on. I'd wrapped some very gnarly, like motorcycle style chain onto the cog, and then I put it in the vise and was sort of tapping on this, and eventually I got out the chain whip and I was twisting it. And a few seconds later, not even really using enough torque to remove it for like a normal sort of in situ built into a wheel track cog removal, I noticed these striations. So the center of this hub is so thin and weak that without the wheel supporting it, it just twists like a candy cane. It just wraps up and started to twist apart. I can't even turn the axle anymore. Well, barely. So, you'd think this would be stronger than this. And really, it might be, but it's also incredibly weak. Incredibly thin material, incredibly soft, and it just twisted up like a pretzel. Some other examples of some pretty nice, classic, bonded together hubs. we have the nice Hope titanium bonded mountain hub. Really nicely done. Also completely broken. The actual ratcheting ring on the inside is cracked. Kind of shitty. I was really into this wheel, but c'est la vie. So what we have is two pieces of machined aluminum that are epoxied in place onto the hub shell. And the next one I made myself. So I saw a picture on the internet when I was younger of some fella, and this is in the infancy of showing your bike off online, and some fella had an Ibis Scorcher. You can probably still find this picture online if you Google it. He had an Ibis Scorcher, which was like a trail riding fixed gear bike based on the classic Scorcher design, the single speed brakeless bike from the Audis or something. And he had nuke-proof track hubs. And I'm not sure if those were a one-off for this guy. They certainly didn't achieve it in the same way that I have achieved this here. I have to machine an axle spacer for the opposite end. So that's why there's no axle in it. But what I did, and also I should say that the nuke-proof hubs were just rough-hewn carbon tubes epoxied between, again, two aluminum hub flanges. It matters so little that, in fact, what I have done here is, this was a broken hub. It had sort of sheared there. I simply pulled everything apart, and keep in mind it didn't have spokes in it then. I trimmed the tube in the center and used my own epoxy and re-glued the flanges onto the tube in a press. I only lost about 5 millimeters of side-to-side width, and since I'm making a custom wheel and putting a fixed gear adapter on here, it doesn't matter how wide it is. I'll just put more spacers on the other side. I let it cure, and then this is an old piece of bicycling oddware. Surly used to make these things called fixers, and the deal is basically you remove a Shimano and Shimano only free hub body. So I'm not talking about the splines that are on the outside that you put the cogs on, although they would have Shimano splines. I'm talking about the small flower-shaped spline that the free hub body attaches to. So you remove your free hub body, there's a hollow bolt that the axle passes through inside of here, and you bolt on this solid machined chunk of aluminum, which, once installed, actually makes for a pretty decent track wheel. You bolt it down, and then you reassemble it using spacers or washers, or in my case, brass shims, or whatever you need. Nice little side note here, if you ever see someone riding around on Spinergy RevX's, those would be the 4, well actually they have 8 carbon spokes per wheel, but people say that they're 4-spoke because they look like a cross. If you see people riding front and rear fixed gear on those wheels, especially if they're in the West Coast, I probably made those wheels. I tend to collect these Surly fixers and do a very similar custom fixed gearicization on them. It's problematic. You can use the included kit for the right side. The left side has sort of a custom 10x1 bearing bushing that you have to shim up, and you have to use an appropriate material to shim it or else it all falls apart. So I made a shitload of those. Now these are getting pretty hard to find, and this is my own personal wheel. Point being about glued together hubs is that once I'd done this conversion, I rode the living shit out of this thing for quite a while. So yeah, hub center strength doesn't seem to matter that much. I would love to see someone out there make their own hubs using wood or bamboo cores. I would love to see the center of the hub be made out of something that is just totally incongruous with bicycles. Yeah, so... Oh, another great example of how little material is needed is the new Sprag Clutch Onyx hubs. Again, reference my video on roller clutch and Sprag Clutch, but the Onyx hubs have little, like helical cutouts in the hub shell. They have these helical cutouts so you can see how cool the guts of them are. Anyway, yeah. F the middle. Who gives a shit about the middle? So cool. Yellow Sheldon out.